Hi everybody, my name is Brian Nardone. Imagine being arrested and thrown in jail for partaking in an illegal activity that someone is forcing you against your own will to take in part of. Doesn't seem fair or just, does it? This is just the case when it comes to human sex trafficking, defined as modern-day slavery by the FBI. I would like to discuss the problems associated with human sex trafficking here in the United States, the causes of these problems, and present a solution which will show why all of you here today should support the imperative need to change the U.S. law to decriminalize prostitution in order to reduce sex trafficking in our country. Let's now look at the problems associated with human sex trafficking in the United States. According to humantrafficking.org, it's estimated that 14,000 to 17,000 people, primarily women and children, are trafficked annually in the United States. If you think about it, that's the same size as the student body of our university. Janice Raymond, who's a co-executive director of the Coalition Against Trafficking in Women, states, quote, "Domestic trafficking and prostitution in the United States involves high numbers of African American and other U.S. minority women, as well as economically marginalized white women," end quote. When it comes to sex trafficking, there's no bias as to what type of women are involved in traffic. These traffickers have no regard for all types of women. An example of this sex trafficking is present in an interview on MSNBC by Meredith Vieira with a young Ukrainian woman named Katya. Katya was brought to the United States by men claiming to run a foreign exchange student program. She believed that she was going to be taken to the United States to study at a university and was told that she was going to be employed as a waitress in Virginia until her classes started. Upon her arrival at the airport, Katya discovered that she was going to be taken to Detroit. She was given very revealing clothing and was told that her trip to the United States had put her over $30,000 in debt with her traffickers. When she arrived in Detroit, Katya was put to work in a local strip club and ordered to make a minimum of $1,000 per day. She was told that if she did not earn this amount per day, she would be beaten or killed. Katya was raped and brutalized by her traffickers on a daily basis and forced to work 6 days a week, working 12 hours a day. This story from sex trafficked victims shows just what these women go through when they're trafficked here for sex in the United States. Now that the problems of human sex trafficking have been identified, let's look at the cause of these problems. Trafficked women are forced to sell sexual services by becoming prostitutes. Janice Raymond states that those trafficked in the United States for sex are coerced into prostitution. They are threatened and forced to work on the streets, in brothels, and even for men's personal use. Professor of Women's Studies at the University of Maine, Wendy Chapkus, argues that, quote, "Trafficking Victims Protection Act that was passed in 2000 does not protect trafficking victims because they are not identified by authorities as being victims once they sell these sexual services, even though they're being forced to do so. The prostitution laws in the United States place a heavy legal burden on women. A Washington lawyer, April Rager, reports that traffickers use their victims' fear of being arrested against them to keep them under their control. Their fear comes from knowing that they're being forced to prostitute themselves and that they'll still be arrested for being prostitutes." According to the FBI.org Uniform Crime Report, in 2010, 8,900 people were arrested in the U.S. on charges of prostitution. Of that total, 5,400 of them were women, which supports that the women are more frequently arrested in the United States for prostitution, including those victims being forced to prostitute themselves by traffickers. These women are part of this statistic because they are misidentified as criminals. These causes show the link between sex trafficking and prostitution. Lastly, the solution will argue for an effective change to decriminalize prostitution. Legalization allows buying and selling of sexual acts, which takes away the legal punishment from traffickers, pimps, and buyers, while on the other hand, decriminalization only allows the selling of sex, so it protects the woman, leaving the pimps and buyers liable for legal punishment. Legalizing prostitution does not work. Under the German law of legalization of prostitution, it in fact promotes sex trafficking. In an article from May 2010, editor of Change.org, Amanda Plower says, quote, "Prostitution and brothels were legalized in Germany in 2002, in part to reduce sex trafficking, provide safer conditions, and remove some of the stigma from the industry. That policy has arguably failed on all counts. Sex trafficking in Germany has grown since prostitution and brothels were legalized." She also states, "German officials are concerned with the significant increase in human trafficking cases over the past 5 years. In the past year alone, trafficking cases have been raised by 11%. Legalization creates a hot zone for sex trafficking and in turn makes the traffickers traffic these women to those areas because it's legalized and they won't be liable for punishment. Decriminalization is the answer we need to reduce sex trafficking in the United States. Under Swedish law, the purchase of sexual services is illegal, but the women selling the sexual services are not subjected to legal punishment and cannot be arrested because the Swedish law recognizes them as unwilling participants, and they're viewed as victims. Swedish lawyer Gunilla Ekberg states that from the Swedish experience, we know that when the buyers risk punishment, the number of men who buy prostituted women decreases. She continues by saying, by criminalizing not only the pimps and the traffickers, but also the buyers, then the expansion would be seriously threatened. By decriminalizing the women, it criminalizes the pimps and the traffickers, so only they are liable to be arrested and held under the law. In the past few years, only 200 to 400 women have been annually sex trafficked into Sweden, compared to the 15,000 to 17,000 females trafficked into neighboring Finland, according to Director of Women's Justice Center, Marie De Santis. Over the past few minutes, I have shared with you the problems of sex trafficking in the United States, the causes of these problems, and a solution that can help drastically reduce sex trafficking here in our country. No other country, nor any other social experiment, has come anywhere near Sweden's promising results. Why don't we make the United States that country? Thank you.
Isn't it the same?
Decriminalize and